YouTube, actually, the survey says that 24.2% say they listen on YouTube, is that YouTube is what they listen to the most now for podcast, and it has surpassed Spotify.
Shut up.
Really?
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Mortgage Influencers, where we bring you professionals who share insight into the latest trends, tips, industry technology, and services to help you be a mortgage influencer in your mortgage business. Okay there. Hello. Happy New Year and welcome. Woo. Like we need like streamers or something.
And I got my Buc-ee's cup today.
Oh, Buc-ee's mug.
Buc-ee's.
Nice.
I like that. Well, I've got my Broncos, which is where Scott is now.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so as you're getting logged in, let's just do a little catch up and a little recap. Scott, over the holiday, you actually picked up and moved from Austin, Texas to Denver, Colorado. So
yes, I did.
Congratulations.
Did I know that? Did I know that?
No, you didn't.
I
hear
don't think
that.
I knew that. Wow.
No, you didn't know that. Nobody
Good
knew
for you,
it.
man.
Now everybody knows it.
So if you're in Denver.
Awesome. Well, you found out weed's still illegal in Texas. Is that what it was?
Yeah. That's why I picked up and drove 16 hours at the U-Haul. Absolutely.
Good for you, man. Awesome area.
Yeah. And so,
no,
and before we went live, you were talking about your podcast. And Carl, I was also sharing with Scott, we've had several people reach out to us who are starting podcasts and want help with that. So I think we need to honestly do something all about podcasts, because there's a lot of pieces to that. And we've all had great success with podcasts and building our business. And so
I love talking about podcasts.
Yeah. So Scott, I want you to share what you're doing, what your podcast is, where people can find you, and kind of, what the process has been for you.
Yeah, sure. So my thing has always been consumer direct. And I started doing consumer direct in 2008 when the market crashed. And here's the reason why. Right now in this market, the biggest challenge with this market is all of our previously trusted referral sources, our reliable referral sources, have significantly changed or dried up. Most of our past clients, if there's life events or anything like that, that they need, that they have to refinance. But if not, all of our past clients are in 2% interest rates. And you think this market is tough for loan officers? At least we're licensed in the entire state. Your real estate agent is in a farm. And if that farm's not turning right now, you're not getting any referrals from that real estate agent either. So I am trying to teach loan officers how to tap into the single largest source of mortgage business today, which is online consumers. Because you think we have a hard time as professionals deciphering this market, consumers have it even worse. The only thing they know about the market is the headlines. So what I have learned over the last 15 years is that consumers will go online because they have questions about qualifying for a mortgage, and they get sucked into Rocket, LendingTree, Bankrate because they spend all of the money, but less than 2% of those lead forms will convert into a loan with that telemortgager company. So that means 98% of those consumers are going back online with a little bit more information, and they're typing in more keywords. And if you can be found on Google and YouTube, you have the opportunity to position yourself as a second opinion loan officer. So my podcast is called the Second Opinion Loan Officer Podcast.
I love that.
You can find it on YouTube. The way I kind of broke it up is the first 3 episodes. The one is my origin story and how I became a second opinion loan officer. The second one is kind of what is a second opinion loan officer. And then the third one is sort of a mindset about understanding what this market is and controlling what you can control and not worrying about things you can't control. And that's most of that is investing in what Carl teaches, right? We can teach how we prospect, who we prospect. We should be loving on those past clients more than ever right now, because if they do need our help, they really need our help. Like there's a life event or something is happening in their life that they really need our help. And so that's what I'm doing. So I'm using StreamYard and Canva, and I'm doing it as a video, and then I'm pulling out the audio, and I'm using a service called Podbean.
Yep.
And I post it to Podbean. I think I'm approved on all of the podcast channels now. I don't know if I'm on Apple yet. It's been submitted, but I know I'm on Spotify and FM and iHeartRadio and all of that kind of stuff. But it's been really fun. I'm getting really good response. I mean, I'm not marketing to consumers directly, but what I'm sharing is my 15 years of marketing directly to consumers and how I did it. Because I think that is the single biggest opportunity for loan officers today, is to build their database of home buyers. Because when this market turns, and what does turn mean? Turn means one of two things. Either interest rates stabilize, and so people are like, okay, well, this is what it's going to be, or home values are going to continue to drop and people are going to say that's an opportunity to buy. So even if the rate's a little bit higher, but the price is a lot lower, I'm going to get into the market now. So that's what I'm doing, is I'm trying to teach loan officers, build your database as big as you can, love on that database, which entails creating new content, education, dripping that education to them. What we're doing that's really successful is retargeting, and Carl talked about this at the last Freedom Club in Nashville. And I was just like 2 thumbs up. I was smiling ear to ear. You upload a custom audience of your past clients and your referral partners, and you put your videos in front of them. It's super low cost because it's not a huge list, and you're only getting charged if they're clicking on stuff.
Sorry.
Their speaker
Nope.
on. Okay.
It's me.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's what we're doing. So that's what I'm pushing on, inspired by Carl. I just went all in on it. I'm publishing 2 episodes a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays they come out. And it's just been an absolute blast. It's activity in most markets, activity doesn't equal accomplishment. But in this market, you have to be satisfied with doing the activities that will result in business in the future, and not putting so much weight on whether or not you're closing a loan right now.
Right.
You may not be closing a loan right now, but you can still build your database, love on that database, remind them why they know, like, and trust you.
Scott, I think a lot of this comes to good stuff, man. A lot of this, like I've always thought of it like investing. So as a investor, I don't mean real estate investor, but just as a, when you save your money and you invest it in stuff. I've always done 2 things. I do some things that give me short-term returns or losses, frankly. So you want to do some activity that brings you in loans for this month, of course, because if you don't have them this month or next month, you can't wait until the other thing starts going. But then you also want to be working on that stuff that's going to be working 6 months from now. And because 6 months, today was 6 months ago. 6 months ago.
6 months ago. Yeah.
That's right. And so the activity you did 6 months ago, you now wake up this morning and here you are.
Yeah.
And so I think you're dead on the money here. We have to do activity that brings in loans now, and then perhaps a separate set of activities in addition to that to bring in loans 6 months from now. And that when you combine the short-term and long-term strategies in together, does good stuff. How do you mind if I ask you some questions? Ginger, can I interview him about the podcast? Is that okay?
Well, yes, let's do an interview about the podcast. That's a great
Carl,
idea.
you could also invite me on your podcast for this conversation.
Dude, we could do this. So I love talking about podcasting. So,
Shoot away.
so podcasting is an interesting thing. It's a
Yeah.
very interesting thing because, like, when you I saw a thing. Gosh, what was it? And like video and podcasts and social marketing and email and phone call, like it in meetings and teaching, like it's all good stuff. Podcasting has a unique advantage over all the others in that the average person listens to the episode for the episode.
Mhm.
That's a very unique thing. So it's like if I post a average podcast, what like 20, 30 minutes, Scott,
Yeah.
would you say?
Yeah, I'm trying to keep them. So that was advice that you gave, and I really liked that. I'm trying to keep them between 20 and 25 minutes. We'll call
Well,
it.
you know how long the
drive
average
time.
person is going to listen to your podcast?
Right now, well, all I have is the YouTube, the
No,
YouTube
no,
analytics.
wrong source. Like when you looked at the average person listen to your podcast on the podcast platform for the episode.
Yeah.
Like whether it's 5 minutes or 35 minutes, or sometimes Joe Rogan does 2-hour episodes sometimes.
4 hours.
4 hour, yeah. So the average person listens to a podcast, the episode.
Yeah.
Whereas if I go look, my average podcast is 30 minutes. The average person listens to the podcast 30 minutes. But if you go on YouTube, which we put a copy of the podcast there too, it's nowhere near 30 minutes, or at least mine isn't. You're much more handsome than me, Scott. So perhaps perhaps yours, but that's a very interesting thing with a podcast, in that you can capture willingly the audience for much longer than anything else I know.
Yeah. And you can
No,
do both too.
you're totally right. You're
You
totally
can do
right
the
about that.
video and the audio.
Oh,
What
100%
you're
do
talking
both.
about is the audio. So here's an interesting statistic, and I was shocked. And for those of you who are on our call, I just uploaded onto our chat a couple of things that we created: a podcast quick start guide to help you as far as what you need to do.
You've been holding back on us, Ginger. I started downloading that saying, holy crap. That's
Yeah,
some good
well,
stuff there.
it was something I created, and honestly, Carl, it was like you had such great content at the Freedom Club event in Nashville, and so a lot of people are starting to create podcasts, but there's pieces that go into it, so it's a little bit different. But when I was putting this together, and I put together, I mean, I'm a guide girl, so it's like I will teach the path. I call me Pocahontas. But when I was doing this, what's interesting is that what I found is YouTube, actually, they did a survey of listeners, and this was YouTube. Actually, the survey says that 24% say they listen on YouTube, is that YouTube is what they listen to the most now for podcast, and it has surpassed Spotify.
Shut up.
Really?
So
So
when
that
you're
people
doing
just
your
turn it on
podcast, and the
YouTube, but
fact
not-
that you're doing the video, so doing the video and doing the audio, and you can get both, so you're getting both worlds. And then the other thing, what's interesting, the podcast gives you such an amazing ability to invite your partners on. And you think about this, you combine this with your Thor Hammer calls, right? So you're making those Thor's Hammer calls on Monday, which is part of what you teach at Mortgage Marketing Animals and Freedom Club. And so imagine saying, okay, from that, I'm going to select so many top people, top realtors, and invite them onto my podcast. And we have a client that started doing this, and he's been doing video. We've done video for
Which, by the way,
podcast.
0 of them will say no.
No,
Like-
they don't say no. So
No.
here's what's interesting. Dave just did this with a real estate agent he's been trying to get into. Recorded the video, we posted his podcast and everything, and then he boosted it. So he uploaded his list onto Facebook, and then he put it on, tagged her, uploaded her list, and then he put some money behind it and ad dollars, boosted it. And she
Love that.
immediately had 8,000 views. And she's like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I've never had that.
Yeah.
She is like so all over him. And all he did was invite her to a podcast.
You know,
So
it's
it's
so,
leverage.
yeah. So the podcast for me, the podcast came from originally I used to do a local radio show. So we have a broadcast station here and WTAN. And myself and Tammy and one other person every Saturday morning, we did I think it was a 1 hour, maybe 2 hour radio show. And what I would do, which probably had a grand listenership of 2, but it was very successful for me. What I did was I invited real estate agents to come do the Saturday show with me. And I'd have I say a photographer, it was somebody that worked in my office, would show up with a fancy camera and they'd take pictures of them in front of the mics and the headphones and WTAN and, these kinds of things and everything. And then those agents would start, obviously when we asked them, would start referring to us. And the joke in the office was we didn't even know if that radio station actually had an antenna to broadcast, or was it, a Hollywood set kind of thing, because it wouldn't have mattered. Called the inviting the agents was a thing. So that's the secret sauce, I think, of the podcast from a loan officer position, is to treat the podcast like a radio show. Like I'd have a cutesy little, whether you did it on Zoom like this, or whether if in my local area, I'd have them come to my office. I'd have a little table. I'd have a cutesy little, microphone, which you totally don't need anything like this, but I'd have that. I'd have a couple set of headsets, maybe, to make it look all professional and everything. Yeah. And that's a great way. I literally had 0 real estate agents, and these were top agents. I had 0 of them that wouldn't come to the show. And I'm sure there was one that didn't, but off the top of my head, I can't think of any that didn't start referring to me. It was really, really, really good. So having listeners to the podcast is just a bonus. But for me, I wouldn't have it consumer based. I would have it realtor based. I would interview top real estate agents and blast that out to top real estate agents. That's just for me. That's what I would do.
And you can even expand it beyond that. And I love the idea of having the studio, because people like that. They're going to dress up a little more. It's a big thing. It allows you opportunities to take pictures. I would take a picture of them all set up, and I would go old school on it and print that picture off with you 2 together mail it to them. So they'd be on their desk. So they see you all the time. So look at all the things that go around that. I know, note to self. I used to do that all the time when I'd put panels together, and I would take a picture, make sure I was in it. I'd print it off. I'd mail it to them in the frame. And, I'd have presidents of companies, that I would put together on panels, and I would go into their office years later, and that picture would be
still there
on there. Yeah. Because it had them, they were speaking, and I was still in the picture. So it was like top of mind. So think about how you can build around that event.
Well, the other thing it did is, like, I figure if I'm going to call people, I'll call the big fish, right?
Yeah.
And literally none of them said no. And so then what would happen is they would see me, other agents would see me with, the who's who. It'd be like I had lunch with Brad Pitt and dinner with, Tom Cruise, and insert in, whatever name. Yeah. And suddenly people going, who the heck is this guy that he's hanging out with Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt? And I get it, he looks a lot like him, but so that was a very powerful thing too, because you become, it's kind of like the Kardashians. They're famous for being famous. Yeah. And I found the same kind of, wasn't intended, but that same side effect happened when I started doing my podcast. So Scott, do you do yours are you doing yours solo right now, or are you interviewing people? And if so, are you doing Zoom? Like, how are you doing it?
So I'm using StreamYard, and I'm using Google Slides to assist. So instead of having to have a script or something like that, I'm using Google Slides. Most of them are solo, but I am doing interviews as well. Yeah. So I did an
Solo's hard to pull off. Solo's hard. So, and you have the skill
Not
to do
for me.
that.
Like
you have a skill. No, you have a unique.
Yeah, solo is really
just
hard.
Getting started. Yeah, if you're just getting started, man, ask questions. Get somebody and ask questions, because and you've got it, Scott. And obviously, Gingy, you're a well-known instructor. You've got it too. But going solo is tough.
Yeah, it is tough, and I 100% agree with you. I mean, I recommend doing, having two people. Now, it doesn't have to be difficult, because you think about, well, two people, I'm microphoning two people and all of this. You can get lavalier mics for $20 that splits off to two microphones. And so you plug it into one computer.
And I use this, and I just set it beside me, and
Yeah. I have this JLab, and it becomes, you have all these, there's 4 different things, omnidirectional unit, and it's like,
mine is like
that's why
$100.
I think like $80.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can even do that. Well, yeah, you can do that too. They're not expensive solutions. Like, none of this stuff is hard and none of it is expensive. And once you record the video, so the reason I use StreamYard, Carl, is it allows me to download the video and then download the audio as a separate file. And what it's also doing is it's
Zoom does that.
It's recording it's recording locally, both things. So even if I have a slideshow, I can record just a version of just my webcam. So then I can pull out those and chop those up into shorts and reels, so that you can just have the face and it's not you with a slideshow. But yeah, Zoom or StreamYard. The reason I like StreamYard more is the branding. Like, you can do the branding better, a little bit better in bringing in slideshows while the people are on the screen and things like that. It has a few different features, but you can do a Zoom or StreamYard.
I find it interesting that more people are listening to YouTube. That's actually fascinating, Ginger. I would have not have guessed that, because I always thought, like, when I record these things, like the podcast, I'll get tens of thousands of, like, I think we're running like 45,000 or so downloads. I think it's something like that. 40, 45, it's somewhere between 40 and 50,000. I can't think of which one it is. Anyways, but and on the YouTube, so I must be doing something wrong. We get like, a handful, well, you look like this, of course, it's going to be a challenge. But because I always thought, when somebody's listening to podcasts, they're either driving home from work, as people are working more remote. I think, they're walking the dog around the neighborhood. So I'm hanging out with them while Rover's taking a dump, is kind of what is what I'm thinking, right. And they tend to be walking around, and I really didn't put that much emphasis on the video part of it. But Ginger, you're making me rethink that might have been a huge mistake.
A couple of things on the video. So the reason why, and we have, I think, 4 clients right now that we're just starting to help them with their podcast. We have some that we're playing around with last year that said, hey, we want to do this. Like, okay, let's figure this out. And so now what we're finding is, as we're doing this, is by having the video, and to Scott's point, as far as, the StreamYard allows you to isolate those, individuals out, and the slides and things like that. So that's kind of a tech side of it. But we call them drop the mic moments. So in a video, we can take those drop the mic moments and isolate those out. And those can become things that we use on social media. Mm-hmm. And so
TikTok and Reels and stuff like that.
You can repurpose a lot of that content just in isolating, even what we're doing. That's one of the things Frank and I had talked about when we were in Nashville. It's like, we have so many guests on our podcast. And, we started this as a service to the industry, just to start having conversations and things like that. But we're getting so many guests, and the information you share, Carl, and you share, Scott, it's like we have lots of drop the mic moments now too. And so we're going to start doing that with what we have. And that's why I would do the video. So even though you may get more downloads, because you have a following, Carl, that follows you, and you've done that for so many years, you will find a new audience coming in YouTube. And so you want to think about that.
It is a different platform. It is a different audience. You need to optimize your videos maybe a little bit differently. But yeah, this doesn't surprise me at all, Ginger, because Google is still the #1 search engine in the world, unless you're 35 years and younger, and YouTube is the #1 search engine in the world for 35 years and younger. So
those people,
these
and that may be going up.
So this new generation, they're all going to YouTube to get their information, and they're consuming long form content.
Right. And you have to watch for trends. So, YouTube, they changed to where they have handles now. It used to be you had to have 100 subscribers before you could brand. They changed to where you have handles, which is just basically your username. YouTube has a test pilot they're doing right now where they are putting an LMS, and the LMS will actually have questions that are integrated to their LMS, learning management system. And so.
Hey, can I do a shameless bribe?
Yeah.
Hey, so did you get a copy of my podcast questions that I handed out in Nashville, Ginger?
I did not.
So I'm going to email you. I think it's like
perfect
podcasting. And I keep them in front of me all the time. Like every time I do these or anything else, I've got these sitting beside me, and it's 72 different questions that you could ask a plumber. It's really, really, really good stuff. It's some of my favorite stuff that I pulled out over years and years and years of interviewing people. And so I'll send it to you under one condition. You don't send it out to the masses, only the people that contact you and ask for it.
Okay. So if you're listening here, you have to send me an email. So if you're listening, send me an email, and you can send it to ginger@edumarketing.com, edumarketing.com. And I will send you Carl's questions, 72 questions you can ask a plumber. I love that.
Oh, it's great for I use these for like my coffee appointments, like hell, talking to anybody, it's I've looked at these questions so long, I know most of them by heart that I'll be like, I was interviewing a new position, a guy coming to work with us yesterday, and I start ripping off some of these questions, really good questions. So,
well, and that's the key, is to get into that. So I uploaded into our webinar chat the podcast, and then I've got a couple of planners, which is what I was thinking we were going to talk about as far as planning, but I love the podcast conversation we've had. But we have because I shoot a lot of documentaries, and so we have a standard video interview that we shoot for documentaries or about us videos. But I love the idea as far as coming up with podcast questions, because having that set that you go to, you become a good interview. And that's really what podcasting is being a good interview. We lost a legend over the last week with Barbara Walters. And, she was, the GOAT as far as asking those questions. And when you go into a podcast thinking about you are that interviewer and having that journalist hat on, it becomes a different interview, becomes a different podcast. And so that's really what you want to do. And the content you end up getting is amazing. And I like it. So here's another thing, and we're going to run out of time here. We could do an entire series just on podcasts, quite honestly. During the pandemic, I did a podcast series that was called Flatten the Curve, Not the Spirit, because we had, it's like so many of us had been through in 2008, and it's like, okay, we cannot go through this again. We've got to make it through. And so I just sent out a quick invitation to people I knew in the industry and said, hey, let's hop on a podcast and just talk about what are you doing right now to make it through, keeping people up, things like that. And so we did a very short series. And at the end of the series, I submitted it for a Telly Award. And so Telly, which is normally a television award, that's what it started for news and broadcast. And they expanded into podcasts. And so we won 2 Telly Awards for that series that we did, which was a podcast series, Flatten the Curve, Not the Spirit. So for those of you who are listening or watching this, what incredible way to invite your real estate partners on, do a series. Talk to me, it's like we can, put together something as far as how to produce, how to put it, submit it for Telly, because there's, definitely a strategy for it. But how cool would it be to call that, your real estate agent and say, hey, congratulations, we won a Telly, because everyone in the series is eligible to receive a Telly. So now not only are you inviting them on, now they get a Telly in their office, and you get to deliver it to them. There's so many things that you can do with this around branding. I love it.
Ginger, I tried to post my YouTube channel, but it looked like it only went to you. I don't seem to be able to post it to everyone.
Oh, okay. I'll copy
You
it.
mind reposting that?
Yep,
And if
I
anybody
post it.
has feedback, again, I started this 30 days ago. The other thing that I wanted to mention here, and this is why I love the interview and bringing your partners on. You are still going to suck at this when you start. So, but it's not as bad when you have other people that are doing it with you. The only way to get past that is to just do it. You're not going to feel great about it the first time, but I'm telling you, with a little tiny bit of repetition, it's going to be second nature, and you're not going to have any concerns. You're not going to have any questions. But this kind of thing, you got to get over that hurdle and do it. And then you just got to stick with it, because you may or may not get instant feedback. But when you're bringing in your realtor partners, that is absolutely brilliant. Because you're right. It doesn't matter if there's an antenna on the radio station. If that real estate agent feels like you're just giving them all of this stuff for free, they feel like you're boosting them and you're just helping them out.
And you are. But so I apologize. I literally, believe it or not.
Yeah, and we need to hop off. So
yeah, I've got a interview. I'm doing a podcast episode. And I'm interviewing somebody, and I'm supposed to have been there a minute ago. So I gotta catch him on Zoom real quick.
All right, Carl. We'll see you next week.
As soon as I finish that interview, Ginger, I'll send it over to you.
Okay, perfect. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Carl.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Scott.
Okay.
Thanks, bye.
Okay, and we'll go ahead and close it out. So for those of you who are listening, though, you want to make sure to join us next week. And we're going to have Theoni Ropey on, and she is an originator with Annie Mac, who has 2 videos that she's done on TikTok that has gone viral. I think the last TikTok that she did a couple weeks ago has like 1.8 million views on it, and has originated. Last time I talked to her, it was like 40 applications that she got, and I'm sure it's much more than that now. So she's
Very
going
cool.
to be on and talk about what she's doing with TikTok. So make sure and do that. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure and get onto our Facebook group, which is Mortgage Influencers, and you can find out more at www.mortgageinfluencers.com. And of course, Scott, thank you so much. Where can they find out? Because I know the Second Opinion Loan Officer, you have a great offering for that too. So where can they find more information about that?
So to find out what we're doing, you can just go to the YouTube channel. All of the information is
on there. Okay.
Yeah, we do have a service that we help people create video and publish it. You can get more information on all of that. That's called the Find My Way Home Expert Network. And I have a free community built on a platform called Circle. We have about 60 something people in there now. It's starting to get some traction, but it's an absolutely free community where I'm sharing content ideas. And it's just content creators. And we're just talking about how to dominate this market and build our database. So there's links to that in there as well.
Awesome. Great information.
Thank you.
So glad you're back. Happy New Year.
No, I am too.
2023.
Yes, I got to go throw a hot cocoa on.
Yeah. Send me a picture of the snow. I grew up
now that I'm in a winter state.
There you go. I love it. And for everyone who joined us, thanks so much. And we will see you next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.